I used to think horror was something distant, something that happened to other people on late-night news stories or in paperback novels left behind at airports. But that illusion shattered one Tuesday morning over a half-toasted bagel and a juice box. The light in the kitchen was soft, filtering through pale curtains speckled with strawberry jam handprints. My 4-year-old daughter, Mia, sat at the breakfast table, gently stirring her cereal like she always did, slow, precise, careful not to spill. I was juggling too many things at once, packing her lunch, checking the weather, scanning emails on my phone. Just another ordinary morning in Eden Ridge, Vermont. "Mommy," she said quietly without even looking up, "why does Daddy hurt the ladies in the basement?" I froze. The juice box slipped from my hand, thudding against the counter, sticky liquid dribbling across the laminate. My heart didn't skip, it plummeted. "What did you just say, sweetheart?" I asked, praying I'd misheard her. She looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes, blue like her father's, and repeated it word for word. "Why does Daddy hurt the ladies in the basement?" Her voice was calm, curious, the same tone she used when asking why the moon followed our car at night, or whether frogs had eyebrows. I stared at her, but she just kept stirring, her curls catching the morning light like a halo. "Mia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Daddy doesn't hurt anyone. Where did you hear that?" She tilted her head slightly, puzzled by my reaction. "I heard them crying last night," she said, as if she were describing the weather. The lady with the yellow hair was really scared. She kept saying, "Please," like when I beg for more cookies. A coldness settled in my stomach, growing heavier with every word. My hand tightened around the coffee mug until my knuckles turned white. Brandon had been in the basement until nearly midnight, said he was organizing product samples for a trip to New Hampshire. I remembered hearing music from below, something soft and classical. Odd, considering Brandon despised anything without electric guitar and a drum solo. "What lady, baby?" I asked. "There's no one in our basement." Mia dipped her spoon into the bowl and said matter-of-factly, "The one who looks like the missing girl on TV. She cries for her mommy a lot." My breath caught. For the past 3 weeks, local news had been consumed with the case of Ashley Kim, a 23-year-old nursing student who vanished from the parking lot of St. Clair Medical Center. Her car was left unlocked, purse still inside, no signs of struggle, just gone. I forced a laugh, too sharp, too high-pitched. "You must have had a dream, sweetie. Or maybe you saw something on the tablet. Remember, dreams can feel really real sometimes." She shook her head. "I wasn't dreaming. I woke up thirsty and went to get water. I heard them from the stairs. They were making sad noises, and Daddy got really mad when he saw me." Something in her tone changed. She glanced toward the basement door. Her voice dropped. He grabbed my arm really tight and said, "If I tell anyone, something bad will happen to you." The mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile. Mia flinched at the sound. I didn't even notice the blood on my palm until she pointed to it. "Mommy, you're bleeding." "I'm okay," I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm just tired." She nodded, unconvinced. "You look really white." I knelt beside her, brushing her hair back from her forehead, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the warmth of her skin. I didn't know what to say. There were no words for the kind of storm her question had unleashed in me. The rest of the morning moved in a blur. I packed her lunch, helped her into her pink backpack, and walked her to the car. She talked about her class pet, a guinea pig named Buttons, and asked if she could wear her unicorn pajamas that night. Everything in her world was still intact, but mine had cracked open like the shattered mug on the kitchen floor, and I had no idea what might be waiting behind that locked basement door. I dropped Mia off at Sunrise Grove Preschool, like I did every weekday. I smiled at the other moms in the parking lot, nodded politely to MS, Carver at the front desk, and kissed Mia on the forehead before she disappeared into a sea of finger paints and tiny backpacks. I even remembered to wave at her through the classroom window, like always. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I don't remember driving home. My hands gripped the wheel, but my mind was stuck in a loop, those words echoing over and over in that tiny voice. The lady with the yellow hair was really scared. He got really mad and said something bad would happen to you. At home, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the basement door as if it might swing open on its own. The padlock Brandon had installed 2 years ago gleamed like an accusation. At the time, he'd said it was to protect expensive pharmaceutical equipment. Company policy, he'd told me with a charming shrug. Some of this stuff is worth thousands. If we ever got robbed, I'd lose my job. I hadn't questioned it. Not really. Brandon was always careful, always practical. That's what I'd loved about him. His control, his stability. I used to see it as a strength. Now it felt like something else entirely. I thought about what Mia had said, about hearing crying, about the woman asking for her mother, about chains, God, chains, and someone not making noise anymore. I'd brushed off so many little things. Like the night I heard something faint under the hum of the dishwasher. A dull thud. A scrape. I told myself it was the house settling. I remembered the way Brandon looked at me the night Ashley Kim's photo flashed across the local news. He hadn't said anything, just turned off the TV a little too quickly. "These stories get in your head," he said, handing me a glass of wine. "It's all fear-mongering. The media thrives on panic." It wasn't just that. It was the way he always knew where I was, down to the minute. How he discouraged me from going back to work after Mia was born. Said our family didn't need the extra income. That Mia needed me at home. I thought he was being supportive. Now I wondered if he was just cutting off my exits. I picked up my phone, opened the voice memo app, and hit record. My hand was shaking, but my voice stayed steady. I needed a record of what Mia had said. In her own words. I would delete it later if it turned out to be nothing, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. That afternoon, when I picked her up, Mia came running to me like she always did, arms wide open, her backpack bouncing behind her. Her teacher said she'd had a great day. I smiled, thanked her, and held Mia's hand all the way to the car. At home, while she snacked on apple slices and goldfish crackers, I sat across from her at the kitchen table. My throat felt dry. My palms were slick with sweat. But I had to ask. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "can you tell me more about what you heard last night?" Mia took a bite of apple and chewed thoughtfully. The lady with the yellow hair was saying please a lot, and I want to go home. She sounded like how I sound when I wake up from a scary dream. "What else did you hear?" She sipped her juice box and frowned slightly. There were banging sounds, like someone hitting the walls, and chains making noise. "Chains?" I asked, heart-thudding. "Like the ones on my swing set," she said, "but bigger, and they were moving around a lot." I stared at her, unable to speak. Then she added, almost casually, there was a lady with dark hair who wasn't making noise anymore. She was just lying there, like when Grandpa was sleeping at his funeral, but her eyes were open. I bolted from the table and ran to the bathroom. I barely made it to the sink before everything came up. The coffee, the bagel, whatever strength I had left. I retched until there was nothing left in me but shaking. When I came back out, Mia was still at the table, humming softly, swinging her little legs under the chair. The world hadn't ended, but something inside me had ruptured. Because deep down I already knew. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't imagination. This was a warning. That night, after Mia had gone to bed, I stood in front of the basement door with the flashlight in one hand and my other hand resting on the cold metal of the padlock. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a key. But I needed something, anything, to tell me this wasn't real. That it was just a misunderstanding, a child's imagination twisted by news coverage and bedtime shadows. I pressed my ear to the wood and held my breath. Silence. Then a sound. It was faint, barely audible, but it was there, scraping, like fingernails against wood. A breath. A shocked sobi. Then nothing. I backed away, heart hammering, stumbling over a laundry basket I'd left by the stairs earlier. I dropped the flashlight, and the hallway plunged into shadow. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, shaking. This was insane, wasn't it? I tried to make sense of it all. The padlock, the late nights, the music, Brandon's sudden insistence on privacy, the way he'd slowly but steadily isolated me from everything I once had, my job, my friends, even my sister. Jenna used to call me every few days. Now, maybe once a month. Always because I didn't answer first. I thought back to the time I mentioned applying for part-time work, now that Mia was older. Brandon had smiled and said, "Elise, we don't need the money. Besides, what if something happens at school? Don't you want to be available?" When I said I miss my friends, he told me how lucky we were to have time as a family. When I suggested visiting Jenna for the weekend, he brought up gas prices and how exhausting travel was with a child. Each of those things had felt reasonable at the time, thoughtful even, but now they felt like bricks walls slowly built around me until I didn't even know I was trapped. The basement door loomed behind me like something alive, breathing softly in the dark. I didn't go back to it. I couldn't. Instead, I cleaned. That's what I do when I can't cope. I clean. I scrubbed the kitchen until the counters stung my fingers. I reorganized the pantry twice. I vacuumed the living room rug until it looked like freshly mowed grass. I filled every minute with motion, because stillness meant thinking, and thinking meant facing the truth. At noon the next day, Brandon called. He always called during lunch, when he was away. A check-in, he said. I used to find it sweet. "Elise," he said, "how's everything at home?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Fine. Mia's at preschool. I've been cleaning." "Good. Nothing unusual happening." There was a pause in his voice, a hesitation, just enough to make me flinch. "No," I said. "Nothing unusual. When I get back Thursday, maybe we can do a family night. Movie and pizza." "Sure. That sounds nice." "I love you." "I love you too." But the words felt like a lie, and I wasn't sure who I was lying to, him or myself. After we hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time. I used to trust him with my whole world, with my safety, with our daughter's life. But now I wasn't even sure I could trust what was behind that locked door. That night, I waited until the house was still. I made sure every window was locked, that Mia was tucked safely in bed, her breathing soft and even. The hallway light cast a gentle glow across the stairs, and everything looked peaceful. But I couldn't shake the sense that something monstrous was breathing beneath the floorboards. I crept down the stairs barefoot, flashlight in hand. Each step creaked like a warning. At the foot of the staircase, I stopped and listened. At first, there was only silence, then came the sound again. Faint scratching, then a muffled sob, then something sharper, desperate, like someone banging with the heel of a hand. Chains dragging. A voice, weak but clear, gasping, "Please? I don't want to die down here." My knees buckled. I dropped to the floor, back pressed to the wall, hand over my mouth to muffle the scream that wanted to tear through me. This wasn't a nightmare. This wasn't Mia mishearing a dream. This was real. I stood, moved like I was underwater, and sprinted upstairs. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, grounding me as I whispered that I thought someone might be trapped in my basement. "Are you in immediate danger, ma'am?" I don't think so, but please hurry. Units are en route to your location. Stay on the line with me, okay?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and locked myself in the upstairs bedroom. I pressed the phone to my ear, listening for sirens, for anything, and then I heard something else. The crunch of tires on gravel. Brandon's car. I didn't have to see it to know. His sedan had a specific rattle when it idled, The belt he always said he'd fix but never did. It was too early. He wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday. It was only Tuesday night. My stomach twisted. Did he know? The dispatcher was still on the line. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "What's happening now?" "He's back," I whispered. "My husband. He wasn't supposed to be back yet. Stay where you are. Officers will be there any minute. Do not confront him." I nodded again, uselessly, and peeked through the blinds. Brandon stepped out of the car, checking his phone. His face was calm, unreadable, but I knew that look. It was the same expression he used when delivering bad news at PDA meetings, professional, detached, practiced. He walked to the front door, keys in hand, and opened it like nothing was wrong. His voice floated up the stairs. "Elise, I'm home early. Meetings got cut short." I swallowed hard. "Upstairs," I called, forcing casual into my tone. "Just getting ready for bed." Each step he took was deliberate, measured. The stairs creaked beneath his weight like they were counting down. He appeared in the doorway, dressed in what should have been his usual work attire. But there were dark smudges on his shirt, mud, maybe, or something darker. And under his fingernails, something crusted, reddish-brown. He looked at me for a long moment. "You look nervous," he said softly. I forced a shaky smile. "Just tired. Long day with Mia." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that made my skin crawl. "Have you been in the basement?" My mouth went dry. "Of course not," I lied. "You told me not to." He stared at me, eyes like glass. "Good," he said, and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, because in that moment I knew he didn't come home early for me. He came home to stop whatever I was about to uncover. The doorbell rang. Brandon's smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. In a heartbeat, his face darkened, rage bleeding up from beneath the mask. His fingers clamped around my arm. Tight, cruel. I gasped. "Are you expecting someone?" he hissed, voice sharp and low. Before I could answer, there was a knock. A firm, deliberate knock. "Police," someone called from downstairs. "We received a call about a possible emergency at this residence." Brandon's grip tightened. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. I didn't say anything." His eyes were wild now, teeth clenched. "If you've ruined this, if you've brought them here, I'll make sure you disappear, just like the others. And I'll take Mia with me. Somewhere you'll never find her." The knock came again, louder this time. "Open the door, sir." Brandon let go of me and straightened his shirt. Just like that, the mask returned, charming, confident, warm. It was terrifying how easily he wore it. "Stay here," he said, the threat still lingering under his smile. "Don't say a word. If you make a sound, I'll kill them, and then I'll kill you." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood frozen in the hallway as he went downstairs and opened the door. "Evening, officers," he said, voice smooth and practiced. "Is there a problem?" "We received a report that someone may be held in your basement against their will. Do you mind if we take a look?" There was a pause so long I thought he might run. Then he laughed, a polite, baffled sound. "That's unexpected. My wife's been struggling lately. Postpartum issues. Hallucinations, maybe. It's been a difficult few years." "We still need to see the basement, sir." Brandon hesitated. And then, "Of course. No problem at all. This is a misunderstanding, I'm sure." I crept down the stairs just far enough to see him fumbling with the key. His hand was shaking now. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. The padlock clicked open. The door creaked as it swung wide. And then the smell hit them. Even from halfway up the stairs, I smelled it. Thick, rancid, sweet in a way that turned the stomach. Decay, blood, waste, grief. The younger officer gagged. The older one stepped forward, pulling a flashlight from his belt. "Ma'am," he called out, turning toward me as I came into view, "please stay back." But I couldn't look away. I saw the first stretcher come up, then a second. The third didn't move. The woman on the first gurney was barely conscious, IVs in both arms. Pale, thin, eyes fluttering. I knew that face. Everyone in town knew that face. Asle Kimu. She was alive, just barely. The other two weren't. Black body bags. Zippers pulled tight over what used to be lives. Over what used to be daughters. Friends. Humans. Brandon was handcuffed on our front lawn, surrounded by flashing lights and murmuring neighbors. I watched from the window as he screamed. Screamed about insurance policies, about pharmaceutical reps, about privacy and false accusations. But no one believed him. Not anymore. Not with the evidence soaked into the concrete below our feet. Not with death seeping up from the ground like mold we never saw growing. I looked toward the staircase. Mia was still asleep. Somehow, impossibly, she had saved them. The next 72 hours passed in fragments. Crime scene tape surrounded our house like a curse. Yellow streamers tied to the ruins of everything I thought I knew. Officers moved in and out constantly, carrying evidence bags, cameras, reports. I wasn't allowed to re-enter. Not for clothes. Not for photos. Not even to grab Mia's stuffed bunny that she slept with every night. We stayed with my sister, Jenna, who didn't ask many questions at first. Just held me while I shook, while I tried to explain the unexplainable. Mia slept in her guest room, curled into blankets that smelled unfamiliar, but she didn't seem afraid. She painted with her cousins, watched cartoons, ate strawberries. Children have a strange way of compartmentalizing. The FBI got involved almost immediately. Brandon hadn't just been hurting women in our basement. He'd been hunting them. His work as a pharmaceutical sales rep gave him the perfect cover. He traveled across 3 states regularly, visiting hospitals and clinics. He knew staff schedules, knew which parking lots had cameras and which didn't. He built routines, smiled at the same nurses, flirted with receptionists, gained trust. Then he'd wait. The agents found journals in his car, meticulously kept. Dozens of pages, typed and printed, each labeled by victim name. There were photographs, maps, lists. He detailed their habits, when they left shifts, where they parked, who they lived with, how far their families were. There was even a column labeled risk, rating how quickly someone might notice they were missing. It wasn't spontaneous. It was clinical, calculated, predatory. Ashley Kim had been rated low risk. Estranged family, single, lived alone. She'd survived because Mia had heard her cry through the floor, and I had listened. They found 2 other properties Brandon had purchased in different states. Old farmhouses under false names. No one had ever lived there. They were remote, accessible only by gravel roads and back trails. One had already been modified with a storm shelter and soundproof walls. The other had shackles bolted to the foundation. He had been planning to expand. When Detective Lila Henderson sat with me in Jenna's kitchen, she held a manila folder filled with still unfinished truths. "We believe he may have killed at least 7 women," she said quietly. "Possibly more. We're cross-referencing missing persons reports now." I couldn't speak. "We also found receipts," she continued, "for tools, restraints, medications, things that can subdue people without leaving obvious trauma." I stared at my hands. "He had awards," I whispered. "He won Salesman of the Year 3 times." She nodded. "Monsters often wear suits. Charm is just another mask." Outside the window, I saw Mia picking dandelions. So small, so unaware of what her voice had saved. Detective Henderson reached across the table, her hand warm against mine. "If you hadn't called when you did," she said, "Ashley wouldn't have made it through the night. And from what we've uncovered, there would have been more. A lot more." I nodded slowly because words didn't work anymore. My vocabulary had been replaced by grief and fury and the hollow ache of betrayal. The man I married had smiled at me across dinner tables, traced circles on my back as I fell asleep, whispered, "I love you" in the dark. He'd also chained women in our basement. I thought I knew what evil looked like. I didn't, until now. The trial began 8 months later. By then, the town had already convicted him in their minds. Brandon Bowman, the respectable pharmaceutical rep, the smiling father at school fundraisers, the man who once spoke at the Eden Ridge Rotary Club about healthcare ethics, was now shackled, escorted into the courtroom by federal marshals, and flanked by a legal team that looked permanently exhausted. But that didn't stop them from trying. They painted me as unstable, claimed I had postpartum depression that never resolved, suggested I was jealous of Brandon's success, resentful of his travel, obsessed with attention. One expert witness testified about false memory syndrome, said it was possible I'd planted the evidence in a delusional spiral. I listened to it all from the front row. Jenna beside me, her hand clenched around mine so tightly my knuckles turned white. I watched them project photos of our house, twist my emails, play audio of Brandon's calls where I sounded tired, anxious, distracted. They tried to make my voice sound guilty. But facts don't bend forever. Not when there are bodies. Not when there are journals in his own handwriting with timelines, victim names, and clinical descriptions of suffering. Not when there's DNA. And not when your 4-year-old daughter says, in front of a courtroom full of strangers, "I heard the lady crying. I think she was scared." Mia sat in the witness chair in her little gray dress, swinging her legs slightly, her hands folded in her lap. The judge allowed a therapist to sit beside her. She looked around the room once, then focused on the prosecutor's voice like it was a bedtime story. "Did anyone tell you what to say today, Mia?" She shook her head. "No. Do you remember what you heard that night?" "Yes. A lady was crying. I went to get water. I stopped because it was sad." "Did you tell your mommy?" She nodded. "I didn't want the lady to stay scared forever." There was silence in the room, so heavy it felt like gravity itself had thickened. And that was it. That was all it took. In that moment, everything Brandon's lawyers tried to build collapsed, like wet cardboard. Even Jennifer Kim's mother, who had testified the day before through sobs and broken pauses, covered her mouth and whispered, "That little girl saved my daughter." The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Brandon Bowman was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He never looked at me, not once. But as they led him away, shackled and silent, I thought I saw something flicker across his face. Not rage, not even regret. Fear, because for the first time, the one holding power in the room wasn't him. We moved 3 months after the sentencing. I sold the house for less than half its market value, even after a full renovation and professional crime scene remediation. The realtors tried. They swapped out the listing address, called it a modern colonial with updated utilities and custom basement. But everyone in Eden Ridge knew, you can't scrub memory out of drywall. Eventually, a developer bought the lot and tore it down completely. The new house that went up in its place has white siding and big bay windows. It looks cheerful, almost eager to be loved. But the neighbors still cross the street when they walk past it. I used the money to start fresh. Oregon. Far enough that no one recognized our names. We live in a modest house on a quiet street where wind chimes outnumber porch lights. Mia has a school she loves, a park 3 blocks away, and a bedroom painted the shade of lavender she picked herself. There's no basement, no padlocks. Every door in this house opens from both sides, and I test them every night, every single one. The therapist says that's normal. That checking things is a way of rebuilding control after someone has stolen it from you piece by piece. I used to resent those late-night rituals, locking, unlocking, rechecking. But now I see them as something else. Proof that I'm the one holding the key. Mia doesn't remember much, or at least that's what Dr. Chin says. Trauma at her age often recedes into soft fog. Her mind did what mine couldn't, protected her. She knows something bad happened, that we had to leave our old home, that people cried, but the sharp edges are gone. And maybe that's mercy. What hasn't changed is her way of seeing the world. She still notices what other people miss. Last month, when her class hamster went missing, she found it inside a forgotten shoebox behind the bookshelf. "You just have to listen, right?" she said, tapping her ear. She still hums while she eats. Still lines up her crayons in exact rainbow order. Still asks me to kiss both cheeks before bed. One for now, and one for later, just in case. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't listened. If I had brushed off her words as childish nonsense. If I had told her it was just a bad dream and gone back to my coffee, my to-do list, my denial. How many more women would have disappeared? How many voices would have been lost beneath our floor? There are nights when I wake up in a cold sweat, the silence too thick, too deep. But then I look across the hallway and see Mia's door slightly open, a sliver of light spilling out. And I remember we made it out. We are still here. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a soft lavender envelope tucked among bills and grocery coupons. Inside was a photo, Ashley Kim, standing in front of a college campus, wearing a navy blue cap and gown. Her smile was small but steady. There were dark circles under her eyes, yes, and a thinness in her cheeks that hadn't quite faded, but the light behind her smile that was real. She had written, in neat block letters at the bottom, "Thank you for listening to the little voice that saved my life. Mia will always be my hero." I sat at the kitchen table holding that photo for a long time. I didn't cry right away. I just stared, letting the weight of what it meant settle into the cracks inside me. Ashley is alive. She's studying trauma counseling now. Says she wants to help other survivors. Says she thinks of Mia when she's afraid, when the flashbacks come, when the dark creeps back in. "If a 4-year-old girl could speak up," she wrote, "then so can I." We still get birthday cards from Ashley's parents, Christmas notes from the families of women whose names I didn't even know until the trial. There's a foundation now in those women's names, focused on improving hospital parking lot security and supporting families of the missing. But some nights, when the house is quiet and Mia's curled up with her stuffed owl and the wind rattles the windows just right, I think of all the women who didn't come home, all the families still waiting, all the voices that were never heard. And then I think of my daughter, 4 years old, in a purple unicorn dress, asking a question over a bowl of cereal. "Why does Daddy hurt the ladies in the basement?" She didn't understand what it meant, but she understood it was wrong. She told the truth, and I listened. That's what made the difference.